Good. Now, remember, I've made the point several times that in the real world, decisions are not so easy and positions are not so completely extreme and clear. Technically speaking, if we keep all our directions perfect, if he gives me the original type of stance all the way, so facing the wall, well, that's not quite perfect. I mean, in other words, if it's perfect, if he has a perfect horse stance to the wall, okay, then I should have a perfect shoulder to the corner. In this case, he should slap. If he tries to turn and push from this point, it's pretty awkward because he has too big a turn to make. Okay? If he makes a perfect horse to the corner and I go this way, okay? Now he should try to push. Right. He can slap from here, but it's much easier for me to ward it off. If I'm like this, if I'm more like this, you see why it's easier. So here, if I'm exactly 90 degrees to him, and he slaps, he has very little maneuver this way. He's completely double weighted backwards like this, right? If he has more angle, see now this is, he's got much more power because he's a little more linear towards me this way. You understand this, right? You know, just by virtue of being less square to me, more like this, his slap is more powerful. Right? When you're trying to slap completely from this position, it's very awkward. In other words, if he were right in front of me like this, and I slapped, it's very hard for me to get much power from this, even if I try to move to the side. And stay there. But if my angle is just a little better like this, now I feel much less vulnerable to be knocked over this way, right? So this is the, let's do it this way, right? So if I'm like this, or let's say like this, he's straight into me, right? Like I say, this slap is quite weak. Just a slight change of angle like this, and I definitely have a lot more potential for this move. So this explains the logic behind the idea that when my shoulder's to the corner and his is to the wall, he slaps. But when it's 90 degrees, he's to the corner, he doesn't slap, but he pushes. Right? Now, that's the logic of it. But of course, in the real world, things don't have to be so perfectly either one way or the other. You have situations like this. So it's not perfect. That's why I was saying before, try to get perfectly 90 degrees, because this is, you must experience the kind of ideal situation.
Which kind?
It doesn't matter what you do now. You can do anything. Okay? Here, now. So I'm a little bit, so am I like this or am I like this? I'm sort of in between. So in this situation, what does he do? Well, he can try to slap, And it's pretty good, so it may work, okay?
Он пытается сделать удар, и это срабатывает.
Or,
Либо
same thing,
то же самое.
he might push.
Точно так же он может сделать отход и толчок.
And he can do that also because, like let's say if he tried to push, take a big step. If he, square. I don't mean big, but I mean square to the wall. No, here, no. Face the wall.
Yeah, face the wall.
Here, like I say, even straighter. I want it to be really extreme. Okay.
Если он делает отход по прямой,
I say at this extreme, it's very hard to push.
вот в этой ситуации действительно ему очень сложно будет сделать толчок.
It's too big a move.
Потому что слишком большой разворот.
But as I say, in the real world, the shoulder may be in between these two extremes.
В реальной ситуации у вас будет что-то промежуточное между двумя крайностями.
And the closer something comes in Tai Chi to being in between two techniques, the more it's true that either technique will work.
И чем в большей степени у вас
Students frequently come to me and they say, wow, I don't know which of these techniques to use because they both seem like they might be called for.
часто ко мне подходят и спрашивают, я не знаю, какую технику применить, потому что такое ощущение, что обе работают.
They say, this is my problem.
И я говорю, да, это и приходит и говорит, вот в этом проблема.
This is not a problem.
Но как раз это не проблема.
The problem is not when you have two moves that might work. The problem is when you have no move that works.
Не проблема, когда у вас есть два движения, которые срабатывают. Проблема, когда ни одно не срабатывает.
The closer you get to not being able to decide which move to make, the less it matters which one you make.
Когда вы приближаетесь к такой грани, когда вам сложно сказать, какое именно из двух движений срабатывает, это означает, что это не имеет значения.
In other words, you can now experiment with a completely variable step.
Вы теперь можете поэкспериментировать вот с такими четкими шагами
And also with a completely variable response.
и с разнообразными реакциями.
But you should first experiment the way we just did with the extremes.
Но сначала, прежде чем вы это будете делать, вам надо поработать с крайностью.
In other words, first experiment with the traditional extreme
То есть сначала традиционная крайность.
here. Try to make a push.
Попытайтесь здесь также сделать вот толчок.
You'll discover it's a really big turn to make.
Что это очень сложно.
Then experiment with the other one.
Попытайтесь сделать, когда плечо
Try to slap,
90 градусов.
and you'll discover
Что здесь
it's very hard to make the slap work in that orientation.
удар рукой.
And then
Потом
just do whatever you want.
делайте то, что хотите.
Yeah, see? And you might even do this.
Можете сделать так.
Now, why did I switch to cloudy hands?
Почему?
What happened there? Because as he turned to push me,
Потому что когда
that was better. See, what he should have done, now you push me again. So here, and now it's like this. So, this. Okay, but what I felt was this. Right. In other words, as he crossed in front of me, I felt pressure on this arm, so I could take it off. Okay? So, in other words, in getting free, you might introduce even other techniques.
То есть, когда вы начинаете более свободно работать, вы можете использовать любую технику.
But you should be able to play around with a completely variable change. Okay?
То есть вы должны быть в состоянии работать с совершенно непредсказуемыми движениями.
And if I am completely casual about my step,
И если мои шаги будут очень небрежны,
this is not quite square,
видите, здесь не прямой угол,
but it's not quite to the corner either.
не острый угол.
Notice something else too. You will be benefiting if you take bigger, slower movements here.
Вы обнаружите, что лучше будет вам делать, когда вы будете делать большие и медленные движения.
Because when he takes a small step,
Потому что если он будет делать маленький шаг,
the difference between this, and this is not very big. It's just like
разница между всеми этими положениями, она будет не очень очевидна.
when he takes a big step,
Когда он будет делать большие шаги,
the difference between this
тогда вот разница
this, and something in between is much bigger step, much bigger variation. So it's much clearer.
будет яснее.
But remember, if I step in between,
Но помните, если я делаю что-то среднее,
and this is sort of in between, like I say, in between perpendicular and the corner.
то есть это не перпендикулярно и не в угол.
I don't know what he's going to do. He might slap,
Он может в этом случае либо сделать сюда,
and he might push.
либо сделать толчок.
Right? And I have to be ready for either one.
И я тоже должен ожидать любой из этих реакций.
So what does that mean?
Что это означает?
That means the person doing the shoulder, it's to his advantage to be at one of those extremes, because then he knows what to expect more.
Это означает, что человеку, делающему удар плечом, лучше работать с крайностями, потому что тогда все будет для него более предсказуемо.
Nevertheless, even though I emphasized in both cases that you should be either perfectly perpendicular or perfectly to the corner, a lot of you were still in the middle somewhere.
Но даже несмотря на то, что я просил вас делать все очень четко, либо перпендикулярно, либо в угол, многие из вас все равно этого не делали.
So now I'm going to introduce the concept that the person can do either one. He can slap or he can push.
Значит, мы переходим к тому, что человек на обороняющейся стороне может делать либо удар, либо толчок.
It's up to him to decide which one he wants to do.
Сам решает, что это делать.
And again, don't necessarily always try to be right, but always be experimental.
Поэтому не надо все время стремиться делать что-то правильно, надо экспериментировать.
Suppose I pull him
Предположим, я протягиваю,
here and he steps in.
он делает шаг.
Okay, this is definitely a more corner-like position, right?
Вроде бы эта позиция больше в угол.
So I would say, okay, I should probably slap.
Поэтому я решаю попробовать
But
удар.
I can still try to do this.
Я могу попытаться и это сделать.
You notice the result.
И вот какой результат.
At this angle, when I try to get around, I end up in this very crossed position.
Пытаюсь сделать
It's easy for him to knock me over here.
сложно будет меня ему.
But if I'm more like this,
Но в этой позиции
now I'm not so crossed. I'm not like this.
мои ноги не настолько скрестно поставлены.
So I can eat. So in other words, I should sometimes deliberately make the wrong choice.
Поэтому иногда намеренно делайте какой-то выбор.
Yeah. Go ahead and switch arms.
Сейчас?
Right. And now you see, you should be able to stop me easily. Right. Okay. So in other words, I deliberately made the wrong choice.
Сейчас я намеренно сделал неправильный выбор.
He stepped into the corner,
Если он делает шаг,
and I tried to push.
я попытался сделать толчок.
I'll give you a hint. When he steps like this and it's too big, just sweep with the arm. Right.
Вот в
That's
этом
the
случае,
way to bust it.
когда человек так делает, необходимо сделать мах рукой.
If I'm accurate,
Если же я буду делать аккуратно,
and now he sweeps with the arm,
теперь, когда он
no problem.
меняет руки,
It's only when I'm trying to take this too big a step here.
не сработает только в том случае,
Right.
если я очень большой шаг делаю.
You see what I mean? So, in other words, you can play.
То есть вы можете тут играть.
Don't try to always be right,
Не надо пытаться все время правильно.
but do try to always be conscious of what you're doing.
Но